We love Zencastr because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencastr has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Sisters Assembled. We have a great episode for you today. I know you're probably thinking, we just watched Deadpool and Wolverine. Why the heck are we not covering Deadpool and Wolverine? Fear not. We are just going to take a tiny little break to break down what was an insane weekend that resulted in me getting my phone blown up by Katie while I was trying to watch a concert because Marvel was out here absolutely blowing minds at San Diego Comic-Con. So we're going to take a tiny break from Deadpool and Wolverine with a few breakdowns coming down the pike for that, just so we can cover this SDCC news while it's still hot and while everybody is still trying to figure out and process what the heck is going on. Just to note, we are still processing what the heck is going on as we are talking through this, so you'll probably hear us trying to feel our feelings and name our feelings the best we can throughout this episode. But we're gonna breeze through a few of the properties that were discussed during SDCC because I think we all know that there's one big announcement that seems to be getting about 90% of the attention, so we're going to spend most of the episode on that. With that being said, we're going to start out Captain America, Brave New World, one of my top anticipated films of next year, especially after that teaser trailer. It looks fire. But we got some really interesting updates coming out of the con this weekend. So, Giancarlo Esposito, we've been talking about his character for what feels like months and many a Sister Scoop episode, but he's actually now confirmed to be playing Seth Volker, aka Sidewinder, who is the leader of the Serpent Society. We will obviously be doing a deep dive in the Serpent Society as we do our lead up to Brave New World. But just a quick little rundown of who they are. They are snake-focused villains. I'm not sure why there are so many snake-focused villains that they could create a little snake-focused villain club, but here we go. They're very famous with Cap in the comics, so this shouldn't be a total surprise that they are in a Cap movie. One interesting thing to note about them is they are sometimes in league with Kingpin, so very interesting time to be bringing them in because we know our good friend Kingpin is potentially rising to power as mayor of New York. And just a side note, some of these members by name, not necessarily by power, as far as I understand, were actually in Luke Cage. So Cottonmouth, Diamondback, there was one other as well. We don't know, now that that's officially canonized, how that all fits in, but just interesting to note that now those shows are starting to create a little bit of wrinkles, besides the whole Mahershala Ali of it all. The other big announcement for Captain America Brave New World is, of course, Adamantium officially entering the MCU in 616, and we're finally going to address Tiamat just chilling in the ocean because apparently he's full of adamantium. So, with that being a major plot point, there's going to be a lot going on and a potential gateway even further into the mutants and the X-Men.
I think it's so interesting that this is where and I'm skipping to your second point and I'll go back to your first, this is where the mutants almost kind of start to come in. And that's not true, obviously, in the sense of the only mutants that we know that have adamantium is, of course, Wolverine and then later X-23. At least that are on our current board that we're playing with. Let's just say that. So I do think it's kind of interesting. I'm glad that they're touching this. I'm shocked at the same time because I think that it was a rumor for a really long time that the Thunderbolts were touching Tiamat and we're going to be doing that whole thing. So I'm a little now confused because obviously we don't have a trailer yet for the Thunderbolts. We'll get to them in a second. But now I kind of don't really understand the direction they're going because the whole plot that we had understood beforehand had been they're going to go explore this celestial island, if you will, and they're going to find adamantium. I don't know if maybe Cap 4 is going to set up for that more, and this is more of a side quest in Cap 4 than it is a big plot point, but we'll have to see. It is, again, very interesting that it's Captain America that's kind of going to start touching the whole adamantium storyline. Very interesting to me. As to your earlier kind of point or the big news that came out about Giancarlo Esposito's role, I had said to T beforehand, I understand that we had to know who he was playing, but I kind of liked that I didn't. I was actually enjoying that he's like this unknown character for so long, especially once we had the trailer drop. But it was like, who the heck is this guy? Like, I know it's Giancarlo Esposito. I know he said he's playing this formidable villain and he's like in this role or whatever. And there were theories upon theories upon theories upon theories. But I kind of liked I didn't know. So I'm a little sad that I do now, although it does allow us to do more research, go into the film a little bit more understanding. They are probably going to be our main antagonist throughout the movie. So it's good to kind of put that hand in hand.
Are they?
Well,
because you've also got the leader, you've got Red Hulk. I also wonder, what are we doing with Sharon Carter? And how does she factor into the black market for adamantium?
True, but this is how I'm viewing the trailer, and there's lots more to come, and I know that. Like, we still have, 6 months, a little less than 6 months for this movie, or maybe I'm not mathing. A little more than 6 months. Okay. I'm like, what month are we even in? I don't even know. But I'm thinking, the leader and all that stuff is going to be more Harrison Ford's president's issue versus obviously the Serpent Society. To me, I'm seeing that as they're the ones who probably put the hit on the president. So I'm seeing Cap as going after them. So I think we're kind of going to have to watch this from a split point of view because it does appear that Harrison Ford's president is going to be major in this story. Like, he's not going to be a side character. Like, he just as much is probably going to be on that screen as Cap.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think in the trailer they've set him up so far kind of as an antagonist to Cap. I mean, obviously there's such a fraught history between Ross and the Avengers.
Right.
So you're not starting out on the best footing in terms of a partnership.
Well, and especially Sam, considering he was a runaway with the OG Cap.
Well, right.
So I not really their fave. Plus, Black Widow was with them, and we saw how that was in her movie. So, yeah, probably not his favorite person to now be on the Cap mantle.
Yeah, how quickly his tone has changed now that he's president. It is interesting. A lot of the articles I was reading were pointing out that he does, transform into Red Hulk in the middle of a press conference. So there's no hiding this one for Mr. Thaddeus Ross. We'll see how that plays out with a Hulk president. Do we think that maybe, and we're getting a little off topic here, so we'll have to rein it in, but I just want to pose this question. Do we get a Hulk cameo? I mean, how do you have a Red Hulk movie in a movie taking a major role without a Hulk? Because I love Sam, and I would say this about Steve too, but I don't know how he fights a Hulk effectively.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I think it's going to be interesting. At the same time, I wonder, do we get a She-Hulk cameo? Let's not forget we have a whole cousin out there who is a Hulk as well. So I feel like I'm not sure. I don't know why, but every bone in my being is like She-Hulk for some reason makes more sense here, but I'm not sure why. I don't know. I really don't. It will be interesting regardless of what happens. There does seem to be a lot packed into this. I know they only added Giancarlo not that long ago. So for him to be in the trailers the way he is, they went through some mega reshoots for this movie. I don't really know what to expect at this point. We're going to need to just get more information, more trailers, whatever, and kind of keep going with it. I'm also just going to manifest now that Marvel doesn't decide to do their little like, oh, it's actually 4 days beforehand, so we're going to drop a mega bomb on you before you go to the movie, like they just did with Deadpool and Wolverine and Daphne Keene.
That was
Because as much as I
insane.
love that, I was like, guys, and I know why. They were like, she wants to go to the premiere, but also, like, come on.
I know. I know. Girl, couldn't you just like chill for like a few days? Like you got to go to Comic-Con, like chill.
Yeah, I literally was like, are you freaking kidding me? Because, like, what are you supposed to do? And that always puts us in a hard position, too, because then our predictions are always like way off the roof because they, like, when they did it to the Marvels, and then they were like, by the way, multiverse and whole and space time continuum. And we were like, see, we recorded predictions already. Like, there's nothing we could do about that.
I was like 75% done editing it and I was like, okay.
Yeah, yep. Might as well throw that whole episode out because we were like, well, we didn't talk about the multiverse because we didn't think it was going to be in this movie.
Yep, exactly. But reining us back in, focusing, next movie on the list is Thunderbolts with an asterisk. And I think the biggest thing coming out of this, I know there was some footage shown. We get a little bit of a tidbit about that, but until we see that, it's kind of hard to, be able to talk about what the movie could even be about. Over the next probably week or so, they'll start to release those online. But for now, I think the biggest thing coming out of that panel is that we are getting the strongest illusions to date that Lewis Pullman is playing Sentry, which we all knew Sentry was going to be in the film. It was kind of assumed once he was cast because he didn't have a specific person or role tied to his name that was really the only one left. But here we are, pretty solid hints because he keeps calling himself Bob.
Yeah, to your point, we knew this character was coming. I think this character's been recast like 1 or 2 times, actually. But this has always been in the Thunderbolts. And as I was kind of just saying, how I no longer know the plot of the movie, possibly, one thing I did know was Sentry was on its way. So I'm glad that we kind of seemingly might have gotten that confirmation. I don't really feel like otherwise we got a lot of news about Thunderbolts. It's kind of strange considering it's actually coming not far on the heels of Cat 4. I'm pretty sure it's only supposedly 3 months away. I think it's the May release. That, of course, could be the end of May. We never really know. But normally they do early May. You have February 14th release now for Cat 4. So I think we should see some sort of teaser trailer soon. I feel like they've been filming this movie for about 19 years. They did have most of the cast at SDCC though, and it was great to see them all. They seem to all have a great relationship with one another. Of course, my man Seb is there and love him. Like literally one of the probably the longest running roles in the MCU at this point. And I don't know, I'm excited either way, but again, it didn't seem like we got a lot of news about Thunderbolts in general. The panel, from what I saw, didn't really seem to have a lot of new information. So I feel like we're still pretty in the dark about this one.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I said, I think they showed some footage that we have not yet seen. I have a feeling that's going to come out in the next week or so because, to your point, it's only 3 months after Cap. Now, to be fair, we did just get our first teaser trailer for Cap, and Cap's 3 months ahead of time, or ahead of Thunderbolts. So maybe in a month or so, we'll get a teaser trailer. Unclear. I'm trying to think maybe around the Agatha time period, if they're going to try to piggyback. I'm not sure because sometimes they do that, with Cap coming out, the trailer coming out right before Deadpool and Wolverine. And then, of course, when we got to see the film in theaters, it was naturally one of the previews, which was
awesome.
I mean, it got me in the right mood already. And then Deadpool and Wolverine just knocked it out of the park. And I was like, it's such a good Marvel day. But yeah, so hopefully more to come on Thunderbolts, but not a ton coming out of their particular panel. Next up, Fantastic Four, which is my most anticipated film of next year. Y'all know how much I love Pedro Pascal. I die for that man. And we got to see the full cast together, at least the main four together. They are starting to film this week, which is super, super exciting. But the biggest thing I think coming out of it is that we have a subtitle. So it is called Fantastic Four First Steps. I don't know what that means. But moving on to the biggest announcements coming out of the panel in Hall H this weekend, which was twofold. One, actually threefold. So let's break it down. All right. First thing, it's no longer Kang Dynasty. We weren't sure how that was going to shake out, but now we know. It is now Avengers 5 is Avengers Doomsday.
Which I
Cool.
love.
I think this makes the road to Secret Wars make so much more sense. How on the earth they ever were going to do a Kang storyline as 5 and then set up somehow Avengers 6 to be Secret Wars when Fantastic Four takes place before blew my mind. I did not see a clear path from A to B.
I agree with you. I have a lot of thoughts on this. We've talked a lot on this podcast about this exact topic ever since the whole thing that's gone on with Jonathan Majors and him being fired then from Marvel. We don't need to get into all of that. We know why we are course correcting, if you will. I think I'm torn because yes, you set this character up. So it's a little frustrating to me that we didn't try and recast in some way and still then bring in Doom somewhere in the midst of all of that. Like, you very easily, in my opinion, could have had them share the screen and kind of have the torch be passed, if you will. I'm not a screenwriter, but I know it could be done. So I think I'm a little upset because of that, because I don't like end credits that lie there and will never be addressed. And knowing that we now have at least one, I'm angry. I'm like quite annoyed about this. So that is my own frustration with that. Do I think Doom is the better option? Yes, of course. We've talked about this, as I said, multiple times. I, of course, think that Doom is the right option leading into Secret Wars, especially. I think, too, I was seeing online that somebody was kind of complaining about this and was like, this is like way too far of an overcorrection and whatever. And the one thing I have to say about that is yes and no. I think it wasn't because of just the Jonathan Majors situation, in my opinion. I think Kang wasn't landing. I truly think that even after Quantumania, and Quantumania had so many problems, I think you saw that, you know, everybody, we walked out of it even saying, okay, well, if that was supposed to be Kang, like Ant-Man just defeated him by himself.
Ant-Man of all people. And no shade, but like Ant-Man.
Right, in the quantum realm. So it was like, I'm not really sure why I'm supposed to feel so threatened. But then you had the Council of Kang, so you were like, okay, is it just because there's a lot of them that we're gonna feel this way? I think too, then you had Victor Timely, and that came to a close. Like, we saw that get solved. So it was kind of like, I don't know, every variant we've seen, he's been defeated or he's been solved. I don't know if
Or a
that's the
good
best.
guy.
Yeah, I guess, like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know how to say that, but his character reaches some sort of a resolution. So I think it kind of was a little offsetting. And then, of course, you had the off-screen issues. So I think it was more than just that. I think they were seeing that Kang was not landing. We've also been up in the air about Kang for a year and a half almost, because I'm pretty sure a lot of this stuff started last March, like last March. So I think the excitement was gone. I think it's the right choice. I'm excited for it. I mean, it makes sense. You finally have the Fantastic Four. You have Secret Wars right there, which starts as a Fantastic Four storyline. So yes, it's still correct in my opinion, even if I'm a little angry that we're just gonna like have Kang never probably properly happen now.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. This is narratively, it makes a whole lot more sense. And I think it's going to be a way less rocky road now to Secret Wars, because now I can clearly see, okay, we're going to have Fantastic Four. Doom's probably going to be introduced in an end credit because we know what it's going to be Galactus in that film. Okay, great. Now he has his own film where he is the big bad for Avengers 5. Is that kind of coming out a little bit of nowhere? Sort of, sure, especially for an Avengers 5 type thing. But if you think about Age of Ultron kind of came out of nowhere, right? He was the culmination of a lot of decisions, but he wasn't someone who was being, set up in multiple films leading up to it. And then that film really sets up obviously Civil War, which sets up Infinity War and all of that. We've seen the films, we know how that works. And I can see how that's going to play out now between Doomsday and Secret Wars. Again, you have Fantastic Four, you have an end credit, you see Doom, great. Now he's in Doomsday, he's the main big bad. Doomsday ends, and we have the incursion. That's how in my humble opinion, that's how Doomsday is going to end. And that's how you open Secret Wars. That's how the comic opens. The incursion's happening. They're trying to save themselves in the final few minutes. Incursion happens, then the whole comic takes place. That's how the event happens in the comics. That is, in my opinion, how the film should happen. It should open with the incursion. You end with the incursion, you open with the incursion. And that makes a very seamless transition.
Like Ragnarok into Infinity War.
Exactly.
Yep.
They set each other up perfectly. I do want to circle back quickly to your note about, that dangling and credit scene with Kang. And I think there's an opportunity there to demote him from a big bad to a standard villain and have the Council of Kangs feature in another property. I don't know what that is yet. I think they're still working out, basically anything that's not an Avengers film beyond next year. We don't really know exactly what's on the slate. I will say I was kind of surprised by some of the lack of future forward. They were very focused on what's already been announced, but nothing really came out that said, all right, post 2025, other than Doomsday and Secret Wars, this is what you can expect.
See, I was going to save that to the end because I did actually feel like SDCC was very weak this year for Marvel. And maybe that's because they're going to do D23, but there hasn't been word about that either. So I don't know if maybe that was why. And I say weak as in the announcements were relatively great, but there weren't a lot. And I think that, and I was only going to say that to the end to wrap it all up, but you brought it up so naturally. Yeah, I was a little thrown off. I was shocked that we were only getting really, if you look even at Marvel's like Instagram when they were posting it, which is what I was consistently refreshing, they really only had like three or four things that were like, hey, this is like news. And that's just about it. So it was kind of interesting. I know we had a little bit of SDCC coverage on the Friday, but that seemed very Deadpool and Wolverine oriented. So I don't know. Like I said, don't know if they're saving stuff, but to your point, it seems very much like, for the most part, I knew all of this was coming. The difference being Doomsday announced and obviously the other big one that we'll get to. But like I knew this was happening. There didn't seem to be a lot of new news, if you will. Or like I was looking for a Doctor Strange 3 specifically with all of this going on. I was looking for that one.
Yeah, I mean, or the Shang-Chi 2 that has been rumored to be floating around in the ether for how long? Like, there was no shot of the slate. I mean, I feel like every year, at a bare minimum, even when Marvel says we're not really doing much at SDCC, which they have done quite a bit recently in past years, even when they say that, we still get some sort of slate update where they're telling us, this show goes here, this show goes here. I mean, speaking of upcoming projects that were completely ignored, we have Agatha at the end of the year, and we didn't get a panel or anything from the cast of Agatha.
Well, here was my thing. We didn't get a panel for Agatha. We have supposedly that Spider-Man freshman year still coming out at the end of this year. No news about that. What was really frustrating to me was you said Shang-Chi 2, nothing. The third Doctor Strange, nothing. The rumored Scarlet Witch movie that they've been talking about forever, nothing.
Ironheart.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say. Then you have all these other shows, Nova, all of those that are floating out there that nobody really knows anything about. It's very strange. I'm going to put the icing on the cake and say, what about Blade? Hello, do we have a new director yet? We still don't know. Like, I have no news about this.
Is it still coming out next year? Question mark?
Right. That's what I mean. Like, it was a very weird Hall H this year, in my opinion, which is why I was like, well, maybe they're going to do a D23 and they're holding things for that since that's more obviously Disney and Marvel centered. And so they're waiting for some big stuff there. But yeah, we didn't get a slate. We didn't get updates to some very prominent projects that are supposed to be coming. It feels a little weird.
It did. And it doesn't help show how we're going to get to some of these things because even if it is clear, the Fantastic Four to Doomsday to Secret Wars pipeline, right? There are other things that need to feed in. I need to see how some of these other characters are going to fit. We need Miles Morales to start. Like, I know that's not their announcement.
That's also so low, in my opinion, of on the list of things that I know you have your thing for Miles and all that. But compared to the fact that Shang-Chi is supposed to be an Avenger, but we have no really idea how he's gonna get there, like, that's more important to me to why we don't have a second Shang-Chi, at least supposedly happening beforehand. Doctor Strange, who's going to the Dark Dimension where there's an incursion happening with Clea, and yet I don't know what's going to happen because that has not been announced. Like, those are movies to me that I'm like, those need to happen. And I need to know more about those.
Well, we just got told by Kevin that we entered the X-Men era, and the only X-Men tiny thing that we got the whole weekend was adamantium inside Tiamat. I'm sorry, what? Not even hey, after Secret Wars, you're gonna get the X-Men era. That's the new saga. Like, we're coming up to the end of phase 5. And granted, they weren't telling us what the multiverse saga was before the end of the Infinity Saga. I get it. But we all kind of know it's the mutant saga. So just tell us. Or like show us that we're going to get some sort of origin story, even if it's just like a Cyclops origin story because they've already done Wolverine. Like whatever it is, whatever you're working on, just tell me. Just like put a little pin on the timeline and tell me.
Yeah, it was a weird presentation this year. I was like, are they coming back to do more? Like, is there going to be like more after this, or is this all? And so I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely did feel a little weird about it. It's fun to do these episodes, but I feel like there's not a lot to cover.
Yeah. Well, the reason I did bring it up though, because I do want to circle back to your thought on Kang, is I could see a world where they finish out the Council of Kangs in another property, recast him, right? But because we don't know what the slate is, we don't know if there's something on there that makes sense to do. Are we going to get an Ant-Man 4? Probably not. Also, it wouldn't make sense for Ant-Man to go up against him again. Like, he's not a specific Ant-Man villain, to my knowledge. So it just really depends. Like, how are we going to move forward in the slate and how could that create opportunities for Kang? But to your point, he's an interesting character and it's a serious bummer that what happened with Jonathan Majors and then also, to your point, the way he was done in his few appearances really wasn't resonating with audiences because he could have been really cool. I don't think he ever should have been elevated to a big bad. I don't think he was ever giving me Thanos vibes, to be honest. But I could see him as a multi-arc villain, maybe just not the multi-arc villain,
I disagree there. I do think I could have seen where he could have gone. It just was so poorly done, in my opinion, of what we saw that it never allowed you to paint that full picture.
That's fair.
I think had it been a little bit more, even with Thanos, I feel like we got a little bit here and a little bit there. And it just felt like, well, first off, most of phase 4, we didn't get almost any of him, with the exception of He Who Remains. And so you're introducing all these new characters, but we're not even getting like end credits of Kang or something. And I'm thinking even like, we know in Avengers, he sent Loki. So he was there from the start kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, then Age of Ultron, you have the iconic, fine, I'll do it myself with the gauntlet. And even then you're like, I'm not too worried about this because there's other things going on kind of vibe. We don't even know who this dude is, but he's making the subtle appearances that we need to kind of have the breadcrumbs, versus they almost did the opposite, trying to make Kang have too many bigger appearances, but then he was being defeated. So it was like, he doesn't really feel that special.
Yeah, I agree. I think the execution, unfortunately, diminished the character's power in the way he was written across the different appearances. But moving on, besides the name, there's another big announcement that literally came so far out of left field, I almost fell over when Caitlin texted me. And that is that none other than Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr., is coming back to play Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doom. Also, side note, the Russos are doing Avengers 5 and 6, in case we forget to say that because we're so stuck on RDJ. The Russos are back. That's a win.
Well, I'll say that first. We literally just did our sister scoop talking about their rumored to come back. I posted it and 2 hours later they confirmed it and I was like,
I saw that.
Are you kidding me? Now we sound stupid. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, because we had so much Deadpool coverage, it got pushed back. And then I was like, dang it, the one time I don't put it out on time and now we look dumb. But yes to the Russos. I'm very excited. I don't need to get too into it because I think I said it on that sister scoop. They know what they're doing with these team ups. I do have some complaints from before, but they know what they're doing as a whole with these team ups, with these stories. And so in them we trust, truly. As to the RDJ thing, I said this to T as we were preparing to record. There's a lot of emotion that I feel like when it first happened, I was like, no freaking way. Like, no freaking way. But then I had time to sit on it. And so I have mixed feelings. Like, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about him coming back in this role. I think if they do it in the way in which he is Dr. Doom, but they don't really acknowledge that he's a Tony lookalike, if you will. I don't want to say variant. I want to say lookalike, because I'm not even going to put out into the world that he's a variant.
Well, that's just incorrect. Like, he can't be Victor Von Doom.
Well, right. Like, I don't even know how that would happen. So I just am not even going to say that. and he wears his mask a lot of the time, I'm pretty content. RDJ is an amazing actor. He's
Yeah.
proven that in a lot of different roles beyond Tony Stark, especially lately. When he was in Oppenheimer, he played an immensely incredible role. So I'm not thinking he doesn't have the ability to do it. I just need it to be done correctly. If they do it in the way in which they acknowledge he looks like Tony or whatever, I'm going to be annoyed. Like, I don't want you to acknowledge that this was Iron Man. Let him play a completely different role. We've had it done before. We've seen now with Deadpool and Wolverine how you can properly resurrect a different version of a character and bring him in. So I'm not mad about it as a whole, but I definitely need it to be done correctly or I'm just going to be annoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have mixed feelings. I think I went through the same kind of roller coaster of emotions where I got the text and I was like, I don't know how to process this. I was also like at a concert. So I was like trying to process the concert at the same time. And I was like, there's a lot of things happening inside my brain and emotional center right now. But as I've had more time to sit on it, I think what I keep coming back to that makes me really nervous, and I know other people are saying this online, is it just feels like the safe choice because they have had some misses for probably like the first time in years over the past few years, right? The Marvels was a box office loss, undeservedly so. And I
Agreed.
will stand behind that. Listen to our reactions. We absolutely stand that film.
Some of that too, though, was beyond the misogyny and the people who just don't want to see it because they think it's going to be a miss. Obviously, that was one of the only movies fully affected by the strikes. So that one just had a lot not going for it. Also, Marvel didn't market it at all, almost.
Yeah, it was a very weird situation.
It was. So yeah, but yes, I agree. I don't think that one was a miss. I need to just say that because we love that movie.
Yeah. But anyway, the Marvels, from a purely financial standpoint, was a miss, right? It was a loss.
Well, Quantumania didn't do too well either. And Love and Thunder, also, don't forget that one was also a rough one.
Yeah. Oh, it was rough. I think financially it did pretty well because people love Chris Hemsworth and people love Thor, and they were expecting Ragnarok. So the expectations were high going into it. However, the execution was lacking. So right there, we just named 3 films that either didn't perform well for outside reasons, but still were a financial loss, or objectively were not great films. That's a streak that Marvel hasn't had probably since the very beginning, right? And I think that they were concerned. Obviously, we know what all the dialogue has been around, oh, Marvel's lost its touch. Oh, it's over. It's done. The MCU is dead. All of the naysayers. We've all been there. We've all fought the good fight. Some of it, though, is like, yes, there's some drop off. And I think that they chose to go with 2 directors that they know, which I'm fine with, by the way. I love the Russos. I think they're going to do a great job. That part doesn't bother me at all. But to choose to go with the man who birthed the MCU in a different role feels like they're trying to play it safe because they know RDJ has basically godlike status within the fandom. Now, it's a little safe, and it's also, in my opinion, potentially, if it's done wrong, to your point, could ruin what is the perfect legacy in the MCU. And that is concerning to me on so many levels.
Yeah, it's really hard, in my opinion, on how to handle this. I hope it's done well. I hope it's a far cry from Tony and they let him act a completely different character properly. I mean, Victor Von Doom is not like Tony Stark. So let's make sure that's a fact in the MCU as well. Honestly, I also said to T, maybe they're just pranking the crap out of us. Wouldn't that be hilarious? It would, but it wouldn't. Maybe, because I'm still on Team Cillian Murphy. You could not have had a better Victor Von Doom, in my opinion, than Cillian freaking Murphy. And I'm not saying RDJ wouldn't do well, but I'm still hoping and manifesting really hard. So I'm like, maybe that was just a prank. I mean, we don't really know when he's coming in. Could he be coming in at the end of the Fantastic Four? Are we waiting until Doomsday? Where exactly is this man going to appear? So, maybe we have time. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah, there is a pretty significant portion of me that really hopes that they are, massively trolling us right now. And they're like, oh my God, RDJ, we know you guys love him so much. Which is true. I don't want to come across and say, sound like we don't love him. Of course we do. He is the godfather of the MCU. But I don't know that this is the right choice. And it just feels like there was an opportunity to go in a very different direction. And I'm kind of sad that we didn't. So there's a part of me that's like, how hilarious and different would it be? It's something that we never would have seen for them to announce it's RDJ and it's not. Or, there is always the opportunity that RDJ is the Victor Von Doom of 616, but not of whatever universe the Fantastic Four is in. Maybe RDJ is only in it for a few minutes because our Victor Von Doom doesn't matter and theirs does. So there is an opportunity that maybe they're going to give him the opportunity to play Victor Von Doom, but not the most important Victor Von Doom. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, I have very mixed feelings about this. I think as a whole, I love that RDJ would want to come back. Spoiler to Deadpool and Wolverine. Obviously, Chris Evans has already reprised an older role, so he's come back. I wouldn't be mad, but I don't know. I just am not ecstatic about it. He wasn't like a side Avenger either. And I think that's kind of to your earlier point of like, he did his arc and it was a perfect arc. He started the MCU and his sacrifice ended the first phase. So I think it's hard for me to be like, yes, let's bring him back in a different capacity. Not saying, again, that RDJ cannot act this role. He 100% can, and I'm aware he can. And I'm, in my own way, looking forward to seeing it. I really am. But I also am like, why?
I think it comes down to a little bit of playing it safe. And that's where I get frustrated. I keep coming back to it. And I keep being like, really? You couldn't pick? I don't even care if it's someone we don't know. In fact, think about what would have happened if they'd picked a known actor instead of Chris Hemsworth, right? That man was born to play Thor. There is something cool about working with actors who are up and coming and who become household names because you've given them these opportunities. It could be that, or it could be another big name, but it just feels redundant because you just picked The Godfather again.
I think it's one of those things that we'll have to wait and see if new information comes about it. And in 2 years, when I'm sat and if it's RDJ, it's RDJ. And I just have to accept that. Again, I think if he wears the mask most of the time, I really won't care. Like, I really will not care because you won't see his face. It's definitely going to be when he's unmasked that's going to throw me off the most. I don't know. I think we're going to have to wait and see. It was a strange announcement. It was an exciting announcement, but also a very stressful announcement. I don't know what to expect. I don't think anybody does. I think the internet's pretty torn about it. I think we're pretty torn about it. And that's really all we could say at this point in time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We know what we know. We're going to obviously stay up with the news, keep you guys up with the news via Sister Scoops and other podcast episodes. But as of right now, this is all they've told us coming out of SDCC. So that's it, folks. That's the episode. If you are looking forward to us continuing our Deadpool and Wolverine coverage, since we're returning to that next week, make sure that you are subscribed on your podcast platform of choice if you have not already. And please check out the website. It's our central hub. It's got great links. It also has the podcast and the blog. So again, our website is a really, really great resource for all things Sisters Assembled.
You guys can also give us a follow on our socials, which are linked in the show notes below. So go ahead and check us out, give us a follow, keep up with the show and Marvel news as we're posting about it. And next week, as T said, we are going back to Deadpool and Wolverine, and we are going to be discussing the villain of the film, Cassandra Nova, because we accidentally got so excited about cameos, we completely skipped her in our reactions episode, didn't even utter her name once. So we will be doing an entire episode dedicated to her. So make sure you guys are ready and stick around with us for that one. We're very excited. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.